Got an interesting topic today. Lots and lots of death. My son likes to watch the Zootopia movie, and toward the end there's a scene where the fox and the rabbit are being pursued by the villains, and the villains think they've got him, and they shoot him with this gun that turns the fox savage, and the fox attacks the rabbit, and the rabbit goes, "Oh, blood and death, bleh." It's just a really funny scene. And so this is not a depressing talk, hopefully, but it is about the death of data and what that means for, as time goes by, how we use AI, and what happens to our data after we're gone. So my name's Jeffery Miller. I'm a technologist. I've been in the industry for probably about 30 years or so, and working at AP Energy. There are two kinds of computer users in the world: those who have lost data and those who will. And I lost data not too long ago. Are you kidding me? Of all the times for this to happen, you got to be kidding me. Okay, it's just a joke. This is actually a Mac. That was a PC. So we lose data in a lot of ways. I recently lost a hard drive that I'd been holding on to from an old computer for a long time, and I thought I should probably get the data off of that. And then suddenly I come in partway through the day and it's clicking, and I'm like, okay. Did some calls around, and it turns out that might be able to salvage it if I pony up the money. But we're going to look at some ways that we lose data. Obsolete and corrupt media. If you've got a 5 1/4, raise your hand if you've got a 5 1/4 floppy at your house anywhere. Anybody? Oh, I see some hands. Okay. Anybody ever own a zip drive? Okay, there's a few. Mine would hold 100 megabytes on a single disk, so that was kind of impressive. IDE hard drives, I've got a few of those around the house that I keep meaning to get the data off of. But right now, most of my data is on something viable, which is SD and SSD. My Kindle Touch, I don't use it a lot, but when I recently turned it on, I was informed that they're stopping support for it, and that after May 20th this year, I can't even download books or anything, but they did tell me that as long as I don't factory reset it, I'm good to download whatever or read whatever I have downloaded. So this is the message. The reason I keep it is because it was the last Kindle to have text-to-speech. And here's what that sounds like.
Dear customer, thank you for being a long-time Kindle customer. We are glad our devices have served you well for as long as they have.
They're thanking me for being a long-time customer. So I appreciate that sentiment. The discontinuation is not so great. When I was... My first wife died in 2012. She had cystic fibrosis, and I remarried, and about 2 or 3 years after that, I went to buy an appliance at Lowe's, and I went to use my Lowe's card, and they said, "I'm sorry, your account is declined." And we researched, on the spot with the cashier, and they said, "Oh, your account has been closed. We got notice that this was a joint account, and that the other account owner was deceased." And I'm thinking, after 3 years, you're finally catching up with that fact? And you know how you go paperless with all your stuff, right? They don't want to send mail, and who likes mail anyway? But because they closed the account, I couldn't even log into the account and get my statements. And so I got on the phone and started with that, talking to the customer service reps, and they said, "Well, we can't email you the statements, but we can print them and mail them to you." So I'm like, great. So, there's another situation. Sometimes you have things go wrong. Like this case, this is me building a fence at my mother-in-law's house at the time. In 2005, I was putting the last fence post in at my house. We just bought the house and moved in. And I was using one of these big augers, and I hit the propane line. So you can imagine I was pretty freaked out. And I almost burned down my house. Fortunately, it didn't all the way burn down, and just smoke damage, but I did lose a couple computers, and while we were trying to get 8 dogs out of the house, I was thinking, oh no, what about my computers? Not about the house. I was thinking about my data, and I don't know, that's probably the wrong way to be, but so things can happen. And what is the impact of lost data? Well, I can think of a few. How about automated bill payments? Let's say you're with a spouse, and the spouse dies, and you know they've got all the passwords. Maybe it's their card that's set up to pay. App integrations. It's not about just when people die, but if you have authentication set up between applications, sometimes it's only good for 6 months, a year, and then suddenly all that integration stops working, and you may not be aware of it. I have several domain names. I use about half of them. The others are just hopefully, it's not even as cool as Bitcoin mining anymore. You know, I've got some for sale, but my email address is on a custom domain, and I have the admin password for my whole family, and I'm thinking, well, if something happens to me, nobody's going to get email. That would really stink. Biometric authentication. That doesn't work very well on a corpse. Just saying. You know, Face ID, eyes closed, it doesn't work very well. So, one of the things I'm going to talk about today is something called Swedish Death Cleaning. Has anyone heard of Swedish Death Cleaning? A couple. All right, that's good. That's good. You haven't heard of it. I first heard about it from a coworker, Chuck Huseman. He wrote an article for our developer portal that says, you may not have heard of Swedish Death Cleaning, but trust me, it is a thing that exists. And I just love that wording. He went on to describe how you should take care of the code that's going to outlast you in a development team. But Swedish Death Cleaning it's kind of a rough English translation of a Swedish word. I want to do my best here, dödstädning, which is a combination of death and cleaning. And it's really about getting rid of stuff that you don't want to burden your loved ones with, because who wants to deal with that? Has anybody ever dealt with the aftermath of someone's passing and all the stuff? Anybody? Yeah, that's tough. I mean, you're already in a situation where you're grieving their loss, and then you've got all this junk to deal with. And I think that can be applied to data as well. One of the tips that the author, Margareta Magnusson, says is don't start with the photos and memories, because that's going to lead you down rabbit holes. So you start simple. And one thing that she recommends is to have a throwaway upon death box. So to illustrate that, I brought a box, and some of the things that I think I'll be adding in here, this box is way too small for the current amount of junk that I have. But, you know, I've got things like my old nameplate from an employer. These are things that you just want people to throw away because they don't really mean anything to anybody else. I've got some old Star Trek and Codemash badges. I could probably get rid of those way before I'm gone, but you know, the idea is you throw them in a box. This is something that is really only meaningful to me. It's the 5 1/4 floppy from my high school Pascal class. So that would go in the box. And finally, I have the TRS-80 cassette deck that would save my programs. So you can see that I've got a lot of junk to get rid of. So, but the content of the book is very, very nice. I recommend it if you think it would fit your needs. It's not a tech book, but it is poignant. So, all right. So what about code? You know, we've got code that could outlive us. Some of it's on GitHub or other repositories. You know, upon death, fork my repos. I think that's a pretty cool idea. You know, I don't know if you put that in your README or if you just like, you know, try to get a lot of people. And, you know, a coder could put this on his tombstone. Final push to main was on May 1st, 2026. So one of the things that the author of the book recommends is that you, first thing you do is you stop hunting for things and you put everything in its place. And that sounds simple, but I have a hard time with that anyway. I've got a basement full of junk. But we're talking data, so if you've heard some of the talks I've given before, second brain is a concept that I use a lot. And Tiago Forte wrote a book about it. It's called Building a Second Brain, and in it he prescribes several things. It may seem like a lot of work to do, but if you do what he recommends, I think it simplifies things a lot going forward. And one of the things he says is that you don't really have a lot of time to just sit and organize your data. So you have to have a way to do it while you're working. So one of the organization principles that he talks about is called the PARA method. It stands for projects, areas of responsibility, resources, and archives. And each one of those areas has a specific function, and it's really helpful in getting organized. And I think as you start to organize your data, if you follow those principles, it's going to go a long way. Leaning in with AI. Okay, so we're talking death cleaning, we're talking about data that outlasts you and all those things. You know, as I think about using AI, I'm reminded of Clippy. Anybody remember Clippy? You know, it looks like you're writing a letter, it looks like you're doing Swedish Death Cleaning, something like that. And that is AI generated. I appreciate that from Copilot. Tiago Forte also has something that is called the master prompt method, and that is very AI specific. And it's a combination, he does it in combination with Hayden Miyamoto, I believe. And it's a really powerful concept where you ground your tools, AI tools, whether it's Copilot or ChatGPT or Claude, with a master prompt that gives it all the context that you would need to start with that gets you a long way forward. I highly recommend that video series. Now, some of the things that go in your master prompt, there's certainly business things that you can add if you're running a business, but some of the things that I think of are your mission and values. I have a document that is the digital form of something I did in my Franklin Covey planner back in the 90s. And basically they tell you, write out all your affirmations that you want to be true as you live your life. Things like your personality, you know, what are you good at? What are you not so good at? So that as the AI gives you advice, it can take that into account. And while it's called a master prompt, it can be spread across multiple documents depending on the context. You can break it down by project, and you basically store these things in your account. Copilot has something called Copilot Notebooks, and you can do that at the notebook level. And I did do that in preparation for this talk. Now, this stat may be out of date, but a few years ago when this book was written by Robert Scoble, The Age of Context, he said, IBM estimates that 90% of the world's data was created in the last 2 years. I think that was before AI. So think about that. Think about the explosion of content with AI. I mean, you can basically type a sentence and it'll create an entire 50-page document. I think one of the problems with that is that as AI accelerates the creation of content, it's trained on the world's original content, human-produced content, and yet now we're using it to just push out lots of stuff. So I wonder sometimes if it dilutes the quality of the actual human content. But it does change what and how we create. So you get to something that's more of an assembly-based thing. If you think of manufacturing, 3D printing. 3D printing, you download a schematic and you send it to your printer, and a few hours later you get a little widget. If you've ever read James Patterson or seen a Thomas Kincaid painting, you know what to expect because you've seen a lot of them most likely. And James Patterson does not write all of his stuff. Was that a secret to anybody? He uses ghostwriters or co-writers. And Thomas Kincaid has a clone army that paints like him, so you can get new material of that sort. But I would say don't let AI replace your voice. I use AI to self-organize sometimes. As I was preparing for this talk, it was, hey, I got a bunch of thoughts, and having that assistance to bring some order into it is helpful. I ran across a book recently. I gave one to my friend, and I have a copy as well. It's called Skill Seeker Maker Edition by Steph Piper. Fantastic book. It really looks at all the things that you can do as a maker, and it gamifies them in a skill tree model. And this is not AI. This is actually pen and paper, and it has a settings dialog on one of the pages that says the controller setting is pen and highlighter. So it's very humorous in terms of the quips on it being pen and paper. One of the things that it does do is it has you try different things. If you've done something already, you just color that thing in, but it gives you tons of ideas. And one of the things I think about with AI and being creative is that you still need to be the person engaged, and it needs to be something that you can do yourself and practice and learn from over time. I have a colleague that does CNC woodworking. I think that's really cool. And you might say, well, is that really creative? Sure it is. I mean, you can assemble things together. And just like the 3D printer, it can basically take a wood cutout and make a craft out of it. So you can do something very consistent with that. But as we're talking data and legacy, legacy data sounds old, and sometimes that's what it means, but legacy can also refer to the end of life, and I think that's fitting for this topic. If you've not seen Randy Pausch's The Last Lecture video, I highly, highly recommend it. It is fantastic. He was diagnosed with terminal cancer, was a college professor, and basically got to talk about how you can achieve your dreams. And it was, partway through the talk, he says, this talk is actually for my children so that they can be inspired to live out their dreams. There's also passing on stories, like I said, to children and to other generations. This is a picture of my father and me and my son, 3 generations. It was on Father's Day. He goes by Papal to my son. And one of the things that I've participated in is StoryCorps. Anybody hear of StoryCorps? Maybe if you ever caught NPR on a certain day and time. They basically, their mission is to capture the oral history of America. And they have a pair of people go in a sound booth, and it's in an Airstream trailer. I went to one in Akron, and you basically, one person interviews the other person. And this is a picture of us at the experience. And I didn't want to steal all of the Airstream trailer stuff, and I was like, I don't know if I took pictures of that, but I did manage to ask AI to simulate it. So I had it, give me a table with 2 chairs and some microphones, and that's what it came up with. And then just yesterday, I managed to find the memory card with one picture from that event. And I was actually pretty impressed because the actual picture of that was this. I thought, wow, that's pretty good. I mean, from just a description to get there. So, and as we talk about generations, this is my parents on their 50th anniversary a couple years ago. And just talking through the history and hearing their stories was a remarkable thing. One of the things that you can do is you can publish a book. My father actually produced a book from my grandfather's autobiographical story that he wrote out, and then we added to it. But basically it tells about his life as a missionary to Brazil during World War II. And that's fascinating. He actually got stopped by local police thinking that he might be a German spy. True story. I actually wrote a book and produced it. It's a children's book. It's called Skeeters, and it helped us during our adoption, and part of the proceeds goes to adoption. So if you're looking ahead and you're looking toward the end of life, your legacy, you know, you got this whole idea of entering the light, but it is the destination that you're talking about. And if you step back and you start thinking ahead from this day to that day, you can start to think ahead and begin with the end in mind, as Stephen Covey says. This quote says, Augustine said that asking yourself the question of your own legacy, what do I wish to be remembered for, is the beginning of adulthood. And Michael Hyatt in Living Forward says, imagine you could attend your own funeral and listen to those conversations. What would these closest to you remember about your life? What stories would they tell one another? And would those stories make them laugh, cry, sigh, or all three? This is a tombstone. It's got my name on it. So it's very real. That whole notion of beginning with the end in mind and thinking ahead to your funeral. There's only one date by my name, thankfully. Otherwise, you wouldn't be hearing me today. There's a well-known poem called The Dash. I think it's got a longer title. I believe it's by Linda Ellis, but it talks about what happens between the first date on your tombstone and the last date on your tombstone. It's about the life we live in the middle. And I put my favorite hymn on the back, and the title is It Is Well With My Soul, and I want that to be true when I get to that point. So basically it says your legacy is the sum total of the beliefs you embrace, the values you live by, the love you express, and the service you render to others. It's the U-shaped stamp that you leave when you go. And as we think about things, we like to hold on to things, but it actually makes them more valuable when you think about them not being permanent. Writer Carroll says that we need to ask ourselves what is vital and what matters to help us filter out. Adding this lens of impermanence to your reflection can bring clarity by reminding you of what's at stake. Now, we each have our own lives that we lead, but if we think about the others that we love and the ways that we can impact them, then that's important. Michael Hyatt also says, all external expectations, all pride, all fear of embarrassment or failure, these things fall away in the face of death, leaving only what is truly important. Now, data is probably farther down the list in terms of importance when you think about it. You've got relationships, you've got people that you connect with, people that you help. And we talk about what we leave behind. You know, I was informed when I paid for my gravestone that I would not own that gravestone when I died. And I had to think about it, and I'm like, why is that? And they said, you don't own anything when you're dead. So you don't have control over if they decide to move you around in the cemetery or if they want to whatever, but it was certainly an interesting experience. If you think about the traces that we leave behind, we want to have some evidence that we existed, that we mattered. And I think of people that carve their name in a tree or something, or they put, if you've seen the picture with a lock where lovers go to this fence and they put their lock on there that represents their relationship. So as I was generating AI images, I thought, well, how would you do that with data? How do you say I was here in a way that people can experience? And then I thought, well, what if you could just capture someone's life experience as an experience that could be taken by someone else? There's a book, Neuromancer, and if you've ever read it, there's a character in it called Dixie Flatline, who was a hacker that uploaded his consciousness to a ROM, and that ROM becomes a character in the story. But imagine you could, experience someone's life as a virtual reality experience. It may not be possible today. It might be eventually. If you've seen Ready Player One or read the book, you know that the entire Oasis universe was created by a billionaire that wanted people to experience and enjoy the things that he enjoyed. Now, last year, I actually attended 3 funerals that were very, very moving to me. There were 3 men, Jerry Watkins, John Wooten, and Steve Swing. Does anybody know Steve Swing? I see a hand. You knew Jerry Watkins? Yeah, so these 3 men, I didn't know any of them super well. I'd worked with one, and one attended my church, and one was affiliated with the church in extended ways. But it was really remarkable how many people said that they impacted them in life. And this QR code, if you follow it, is to a website called Dignity Memorial. And I think a lot of funeral homes actually will facilitate that as part of their package, but it's really remarkable because you can actually put messages to honor them. And I thought that was really a great thing. Now let's get practical and tactical about this. One of the things that you need to think about is that the platform that you use for cloud storage, for backups, and all these things should be independent of any vendor. Now, if you think about the big behemoths, right? You got Google and Microsoft and Apple. I think you should have a strategy that covers across the board all of your footprint. All right, who does not have a backup of their data? You don't have to raise your hand. I know it's embarrassing, but think about it. I didn't have a backup of that hard drive, and I lost some meaningful data. But now I have a Synology in my house. It's a Synology NAS. I've got an application installed on it that synchronizes my OneDrive, my Google Drive, my Dropbox. And so I have a copy in my house if the cloud ever decides to delete or forget my data. One thing that I've been working on with AI, in this particular case, I've been using Copilot. Copilot allows you to ground your interactions with data. And as I mentioned before, there's the master prompt concept. And the prompt that I'm working with now is to create a data longevity plan. And that incorporates a lot of things. It incorporates data that I need now, data that my family will need, and then data that I want to see survive me. So the first thing you need to do then is decide what matters right now. And if you look at what that could mean, something that's really important to me is self-discovery, key events, important people. I think that's an important part of formation in your life, and even things that some would call coincidences that I believe are God working things out in my own life. My medical history, chronic disease progression, mental health, and personal recovery journey, those are all things that I want to be preserved. I want to have them in my life now. I don't want to lose those while I'm alive. I do have several journals. I try to keep one every year if I can. And between analog and digital, it's kind of hard to keep those working together very well. And there are some places there are apps that you can use to take pictures of your journal. I don't know that it's a lot of fun because you got to turn a page, take a pic, turn a page, take a pic. But one of my dreams is to be able to digitize my analog journals and also to print my digital journals. So I've got them both ways. Now, I mentioned that book earlier about my grandfather. It was remarkable because he actually kept a daily journal for 60 years. And we used that to compile things about his life. And he was only was missing one because someone stole his backpack while he was in Brazil. And that was the only one out of that set that we lost. As I said before, as you're building your personal system of data preservation, the phrase that I want to point out is you should think alliance, not allegiance. I use Apple, I use Microsoft, Windows, Mac. I have stuff in Google Drive, and primarily I use OneDrive, but any tool, writer Carroll says that whether it's digital or analog, they're only as valuable as your ability to accomplish the task at hand. And so as you're going through this process, you should set it up in such a way that it's not vendor specific or that's your single point of failure. Simon Sinek said that in the book The Infinite Game, he says that no matter how successful you are in life, there's no one going to be declared a winner. So you should enjoy the journey. You should think of the accomplishments and the ways that you improve yourself. And they are all things that you can work toward. Adam Braun, in the book, The Promise of a Pencil, he says the biggest difference between the person who lives his or her dreams and the person who aspires is the decision to convert that first spark of motivation into immediate action. And so what I'm basically encouraging you to do, and we can talk specifics in this way, is to do something about this. Think about the data that you have, the data that forms your life, that informs it and forms it. And think about what would happen if you lost it. It's always the last thing you worry about, right? It's like, oh yeah. I actually started indexing my removable media, all these little SD cards from my camera and from phones and things. I made little labels with a number on them and basically started a database about what is on this card, because if you don't know what it is, then they're just 50 bazillion little widgets. And if you need to find something, then certainly that would help. But as far as steps to go through, first thing I want to encourage you to do is think about your legacy. Think about the life that you're living. Peter Drucker said that the way to tell the future, the best way, is to create it. And so as you think about these things that you want to do in life, we saw that maker list. There's some cool stuff I'd like to try. There's dev boards. I want to do music production, DAW or DAW. All these things, I want to try them. But more importantly than that is I've got a son, and I want him to grow up and experience lots of good things. I want our relationship to be strong. I want my relationship with my family, my wife, all the relationships and the impact that I have, I want that to be strong as well. Think about what people will say once you're gone. All this data doesn't matter if nobody sees that you were, a good person that impacted their lives. Speaking realistically and practically, look into a master prompt. That video that I shared, I think is a very powerful technique. When you're using AI, it can help you build plans. Things that it can do is you can say, hey, ask me some questions to formulate a data longevity plan. There's something called a data will, and there are data executors, if you can imagine that. And then organize your data so that it makes it easier to work with. Something on my to-do list is to ask Copilot how I should better organize my OneDrive account. I mean, very basic, but it's helpful. And then use AI to build that data longevity plan. Think about passwords and accounts and bill pay, all that stuff. Boring stuff, but certainly essential. And the last thing you want to do is have something go wrong and leave that for your family to worry about. And then finally, share what you learn. Share what you learn in AI, share what you learn in life, mentor someone. All these things are important. One of the songs that I really enjoy is, I think it's by Natasha Bedingfield, if I got her name right. It's called Unwritten. It basically says that no one can express what you can express. That your life is like a book that's still being written. And I'll give bonus points to anybody that can find that song on their phone right now, because I could definitely groove out to it. That's everything I have. The slides will be up there on this URL. I'm on LinkedIn. And thank you. Do you have any questions? Yes, sir.
How do you think about curation versus like completeness? You talked about the Swedish Death Cleaning or whatever, and that's like a really curated version of your data. But then, like, how do you think about that versus like having an actual record of what you actually were like, your actual data footprint versus a curated version?
That's interesting. The question is, what do I think about having a curated version of my data footprint versus just a record of what I actually did? And what I think of in that regard is there's some intentionality with curation. There's certainly the concept of putting your best foot forward. You could certainly misrepresent yourself to make you sound better than you actually were. But what I think of more so is pulling out the things that were really your own essence. And if you can get a grip on that or a handle on that while you're still living, and you can think about what are the things that I did, enjoyed, that I would love to share with others, you can actually do that before you're gone. One of the things that the author talks about is taking the things that you own, this is not necessarily data, but actually giving them away so that people can enjoy them rather than having to decide, what do I do with this? Now, one difference between that and the physical world is you could just delete the account and then there's not much to deal with in that sense. But if you think about data like photos or memories or stories, I think those are really valuable to share with others. And that's where, it's different from, hey, here's my account, good luck. What are they going to do with it? I mean, AI can certainly analyze it and maybe find things. I get little reminders all the time that say, hey, 5 years ago, this is what you were doing. And I love those. You get a little movie, So AI can definitely help with that. But curation, I think, gives you more potential for value than just random. Anybody else? Do we have any questions in the discussion? Discord? Okay. All right. Well, that's what I have. You can hit that URL. If anybody would like a copy of the book, this is one that I bought to give away. So I'm ready to take questions if you have coming up. All right. I will give it to you. Thank you.